scale class, really the biggest rule is there's a front bumper required. So as far
We're
as
actually, I'm going to start you over. I think we had an issue with the live stream. Hold on 1 second. So we're gonna start over. I just saw the ticker going now. I don't know whether we were live and lost it or we had an issue going live. So in
I
case you're
think,
just catching us
yeah, we're
now,
just coming live now.
yeah, I'm Matt Higgins. So I'm the marketing brand strategist for Axial. And I've been talking with Wyatt, who's an engineer with Axial and Horizon Hobby. And he's catching us up on his recent trip to Maine for the World Championship of Rock Crawling, which is a WRCCA event. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry for the little bit late start. Wyatt and I have been sitting here talking away. I'm going to make him repeat everything he just told me, unfortunately. He just came back from a great trip. You probably have heard, Wyatt isn't just an engineer. He's a competitor. He's well known in competitive circles. He's worked on some very big, literally big projects at Axial and some very big projects as well as far as importance. He is well known not only for his competition, like I said, but for designing the SCX10 Pro. And not only has he designed it, he's been winning with it, both as a prototype, going way back,
Trying.
to very recently. So he was just telling us about his trip to Maine for the WRCCA Championship. And he's going to tell us a little bit, hopefully, why, if you don't mind telling me again and the people out there, what this event is and how it works.
Yeah, no problem. So this year, the World Championship was in Maine, WRCCA. I believe it's World Remote Control Crawling Association.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are familiar with SORCA. That's a completely different association, different rule set, and in no way compared at all. So in WRCCA, you have mini class, and that's limited to around a 9.5-inch wheelbase, 9.5-inch width, pretty small trucks. I think the tire max is around the 4-inch mark, 4.2, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have too much experience in that, but those are pretty small classes and getting more popular. So that's cool to see. About the size of a UTV 18 for reference.
I thought you'd be good for the mini class with the UTV 18. But
yeah,
you said there was a reason why you didn't run it.
So there was a reason why I didn't run it. Just the way the event was structured, they had you pick performance scale or mini. You couldn't run both. So I obviously picked performance scale, coming from a scale background. And I wanted to run the SCX10 Pro. So from mini, you go to the performance scale class. This one, the wheelbase, it doesn't actually have a dimension. I know that was a discussion in Maine and has been for a little bit. So the wheelbase actually based on the body length. So if you have a 16-inch body, your wheelbase max can be 13-inch. So basically you have to have 3-inch longer than your wheelbase. And then you also have to have a bumper, only a front bumper that sticks out more than 3 millimeters from the body. So those are kind of where you get the scale aspect of that class. You're limited to a 4.8-inch tall tire, and it has to be a scaled tire. It can't be a pin tire or and like the deluxe goats or anything you cut down smaller. So that's, you get the scale class. Then you can bump up into sportsman. So that has to be a shaft driven car. You only get 2 channels. So you get steering, motor, ECA. So that's it. There's nothing else. And that goes for mini and performance scale.
So we talked before off camera. Yeah. It's no dig, no winch, no on the flight, under drive or overdrive, either way you have it set up. It's strictly these are driver classes.
Yes. Yeah. So sportsman, mini, and performance scale, you're on the course. It's you, your truck, your points, and your time. So you have to drive it or take the gate if you need to and keep moving. But if you can only do that so many times until you point out. So it's really a driver's class. which is quite fun. Sportsman, you can use the comp tires, the pin tires, anything that's not scale or taller. So I believe that's limited to a 6-inch tall tire. And then gates are a little bit wider as well. So you're getting into, you'll hear them called shafties or sporties sometimes. It's all the same class.
Yeah, and now that's popular on the West Coast where you are, especially SoCal.
Yes.
They run the same rules as they ran at the World Championship?
Yes. So anything I've been to, at least in the US, and most events that are going to run these pro, sporty, mini performance scale classes are all going to be on the WRCCA rules. Okay. Very rarely they make up their own rule set. If they do, it's normally like anything you bring, just run it, have fun. So from sportsman, you jump up to pro. So that's motor on each axle, or MOA. So you have 2 motors you can control individually, steering, but you still no rear steer or then dig and things like that are from driving the motors, not in a transmission. So that's, again, pin tires, 2.2 carbon wheels. Usually you see the flat face wheels. So something like this. So
all right.
Usually,
so are you running with that much offset? You running a Capra axle?
So on my sporty or sportsman, I run Capra axles, and then on my pro, I run XR10 axles.
Hold on to those.
Yeah, usually just a hub, pretty wide hub, but it makes it really easy to get narrower in the rear. A lot of people like to run an offset truck, so a little wider in the front. So that's a super fun class. And then you get to the top class, which I just got my first experience of at Worlds, and that's super. So you can kind of see it up there.
See it right above your head on the wall.
So huge wheels and tires, motor on each axle, rear steer, no limits to what you can do really with that truck. It has to be between a 16 and an 18-inch wheelbase. And that's really one of the main rules. The chassis has to be so long, so big, but it's really have at it. I know there was a guy there, Brian, I believe his name is, that had a linear actuator in his chassis. So the whole chassis would rise up or flatten out, depending if you needed breakovers or side hill or anything. So that was pretty cool to see. That's also the same guy that got a rule about him in that class. So he actually took a ducted fan one year, and that applied, like, I think he was telling me, like 2 pounds of pressure downward when he fired that thing up on the truck to just suck it to the rocks. So it's love really it. All out class, and might become one of my favorite classes here soon. We'll give it some time.
I was telling you before it started, it's been a long time since I ran super. That was the first class I ever ran in competition. In the best thing, the thing they were best at was braking. Like that is, we were running Tamiya quadbuster axles, and everything was hobbled together. My dig ran off a micro switch. It was a hot mess.
So yeah, I mean, it hasn't come that far. As you know, there is one axle that's newer than this. Deluxe makes it, but these are V1 RC 4-wheel drive Bully axles. Just so it's nothing too crazy, but and for size reference, that's your normal pro tire. Here.
Yeah, there's nothing scale about a super.
No, not at all. You got all the steering, motors everywhere. So 2 ASCs, 2 BECs, 2 servos. It gets busy.
You run 3S or 4S on that?
Currently 3S. So I actually ran my first 4S truck at Worlds, which was the Sporty I built.
Okay.
So that was my first experience with 4S and a direct power servo.
All right. So a lot of people run 4S, direct power servos, and outrunners. Did you run an inrunner or an outrunner motor?
Outrunner. It was my first experience.
All new everything.
Yeah. So this was a Sporty. So Capra axles, ESC receiver, servo, all right there. And then, yeah, I don't know if you can see it in there, but it's a little tiny. I think it's a 1900 kV, little tiny motor. But the way this chassis is built, it's a little purple end in there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, just little tiny, everything bare minimum. So this would be a Sportsman. You can see the big weights up front, brass with tungsten slugs pressed in there. So that's
very cool.
what you see on the Sportsman days. So
if we're talking classes, comparing SORCA Class 2 to Performance Scale, they're similar and very different. So what would you say is similar and what's different about
them? So I basically have the same exact setup, same truck built for each one. It's just how much stuff you have to put on it for the scale points. So Performance Scale Class, WRCCA, there's no scale points. That's not a thing. You have to have the body width, height, length, and then a front bumper that's so wide and sticks out so far. Other than that, you can kind of build it how you want. I think there is a rule there for length. You can't have like a way forward skid plate or rearward or no skid plate or something.
I didn't know that.
But it doesn't really rule out any trucks that I've looked at or measured. So I think it's just in there because at some point someone built something and they had to make a rule about it. So it's the same base truck, but all I have on my Performance Scale truck is a front bumper. In SORCA Class 2, I have front bumper, rear bumper, internal cage, full interior, 2 figures in there, metal sliders, a winch. I mean, there's a lot going on, metal roll bar, and that's all to get your scale points. So it's a whole nother show, whole nother rule set. On-course rules are pretty close to the same. Bonus gates, WRCCA are 10 points. Bonus gates in SORCA are only 5.
Okay.
Other than that, the rules on course are about the same.
You said your setup's pretty similar between the two as far as shocks, springs, tires, inserts.
Yeah, so my Performance Scale truck ready to run is about 5.3 pounds.
Pay attention, people out there. He didn't say 9 pounds, 12 pounds, 8 pounds, 5 pounds and change.
Yeah, so just over 5.25 pounds. Ready to run, battery, everything. And then my Class 2 is at 6 pounds, ready to run. And that's just all the stuff you have to put on top of them.
Yeah, which is a flyweight compared to what I see people running. I think it's one of the things that people most often get wrong is they keep, if a little weight's good, a lot of weight has to be great. And there's a lot, point of diminishing return. Before we get into more, I have a lot of questions about setup, and I know people do too. Getting to the Worlds wasn't as easy, even though you were this was your home country. It should be easy. It wasn't that easy of a trip, and it almost changed a lot. Like it almost had a big impact. So what happened on your travels from California or Utah to Maine?
Yeah. So I had all the flights, rental cars, hotels, everything booked. Everything reserved as it should be month or so in advance.
Yeah, you're an engineer. You've double crossed and double dotted.
Yeah, I thought I had everything planned. So leaving Utah, I've never flown out of this airport. It's new to me, which the airport was fine. It was the airline, which I'm not going to say, but the airline departed an hour late. And then we all get on the plane and they say they have a new startup procedure. So that takes another 30 minutes of us sitting on the runway. So an hour and a half later, we finally take off from when we were supposed to. Me knowing that I had a connecting flight in Dallas from Utah, I only had an hour. So I knew I had already missed that.
Which is a healthy one, though. Normally, that's not cutting it close.
Usually an hour to, I mean, I wasn't planning on eating or going doing anything. I just needed to get off out of one gate and over to the other gate, which Dallas is pretty good. They have the whole transit thing, but it's doable in 15, 20 minutes easily. So I thought I was okay. Turns out I was going to miss that. So I figured, well, there's got to be another flight going to Portland. I think it was about 7:30 at that time, PM. So I get there, no flights. The only flight they can get me is 7 PM the next day, Thursday, which is the day we're running Performance Scale or Mini, whichever you chose. I'm like, well, that doesn't work. I need to get there. This is my whole trip here.
Yeah.
This is what my big focus is. So I looked and I go, okay, well, I'm not familiar with the East Coast at all. So what's another bigger town that's close? So I find Boston. Well, there's got to be a flight into Boston.
Oh, there's a lot.
They can get me there by 3 p.m. That still doesn't work. There's nothing else that night. So they were no help. I went on my phone, found a whole bunch of different flights, and went back to their desk and showed them those flights. And they had to look them up. They didn't see them in their system. So, which was amazing. But I got on those flights and I was departing Dallas at 9 p.m. to go backwards to Denver.
Oh, God.
So back to Denver I go. Midnight, I leave Denver to get to Pittsburgh at 5:30 a.m. and then from Pittsburgh to Boston at 8:30 a.m., which, mind you, 9 a.m. is tech in for these trucks. So I'm messaging people Wednesday night, Thursday morning, can I still run? What's the deal if I show up a few hours late? It's the best I can do, just hoping they let me run.
Mm-hmm.
So I rent a car in Boston, drive all the way to Portland, finally got there at like noon. And in the whole process, they lost my bag. So I had no charger. I had my batteries, my remote, and my truck, but no charger to charge them. And of course, I run Spectrum plugs, and a lot of those guys run the smallest plug possible. So I didn't have any plugs that were in common, no adapters. They're all with the charger. So found a guy nice enough on the Super Shafty team. He had a soldering iron on hand, a plug, and batteries for me to borrow. So we went to the parking lot, soldered a new plug on the truck, and got a couple batteries. And I found 2 batteries that had, I think they were like 50%. So I turned off my low voltage cutoff on my ESC and said, I'm going to run 2 courses and I'll get the other batteries from the other guy when he's done. So that was a lot of things going on to get there, 2 hours of sleep on the plane to just run 4 courses and then find out what happened. So
yeah. I got to be honest, I wouldn't mentally be, after all that, I wouldn't mentally be right to run. I would run and just run to get it over with. It's amazing that you not only ran it, you ran so well.
I was determined at that point. So things that go wrong or like that don't discourage me. Normally, I'm just more determined to prove it to myself too that I can do it. So at that point, and I knew there were great people there to help me out, and the guy that was helping put on the event, Jay Slick, he was more than happy to let me come in, run late, and then have a Marshall run with the other 2 courses I missed in the morning. So that was awesome. And I can't thank everyone there enough for just letting me do that. So a lot of people would go, well, you're late, tough luck, run what courses you can. So
yeah, that's what's great about the rock crawling community. A race, not only, would they not want to, they just simply couldn't. A race is a race. I'm like, it's over.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So yeah, you went all over. You went, from Utah to Texas, back up to Colorado, which is next to where you started.
Yes.
To the mid, East Coast, up to Boston. Then you had to get in a car.
Yeah.
Then you had a problem solve, and then you actually had to do what you came there to do in the first place.
Yes.
And you did it so well, you won.
Yeah, it turned out I drove well enough despite everything going on. And there was definitely tough competition there, and I knew there would be. So I had to drive and not knowing scores. So normally you start and you're in groups and you drive in groups. So you kind of gauge how people are doing, and you kind of know I'm a gate or two off the points, or this guy's doing really well, and I'm going to kind of gauge maybe off him, or however you work it out. Coming in late, I had no idea. They had already ran half the courses. I didn't know if they were DNFs. I didn't know if they were perfects. I mean, no idea. So the pressure really came down to the last course I had to run. They were already done, and they were just watching me, waiting for me to finish. So I didn't know what the scores were, what I had to do. Did I need to risk the bonuses? Did I need to get all of them? So that was another kind of mindset difference. But I don't know if I could have overthought it at that point. I was pretty tired. So
yeah, but there's a lot like going on. So when you're at a competition, one, you get to see other people run. So there's an advantage there. You can see what works and what doesn't work. But also, like you said, when you're aware of points, you could see, I find for myself where to take risks and what not to. So if I know I'm comfortable, I'm not going to take risks. Where you're blind, you're just going.
I had no idea. I had no idea. It's normally I like to run the numbers throughout the day in my head, kind of asking a few people here and there in different groups, how'd you do, or this, just, I want to know, and I want people to do as well as they can too. So it's all good competition, and it turned out well for me, and a lot of other people were definitely up there. It was tough to beat. So yeah. I'm kind of glad I knew, or didn't know. So it was a different mindset, not what I'm used to, but got that over with, and the rest of the weekend was all good to go. So
now, I imagine being from the West Coast, a lot of experience in Utah and California and down in the Southwest. Despite all your experience, the coastal rocks of New England had to be something entirely different. Did you know what to expect? Was it that much different to you?
So I had seen some pictures and videos of people that were there earlier in the year, or just a few days early to drive around on the rock. I thought it was going to be slipperier than it was, because it was, I mean, we were getting mist from the ocean. We're right on the coast. Waves are crashing 30 yards from the courses. So I figured it would be maybe a little slippery, mossy, if that. And I knew there was going to be a lot of jagged edges. So which, depending on how the gates are, it can either help you because it's that many more things for your tire to bite, or if it's going in the wrong direction or not the ideal direction, it's that many more things for your axles and skid plate and everything to get hung up on. So I kind of got a good feeling for it, just, looking at a few gates, feeling the rock, and the grip levels are actually really high, which was good. And I'm used to high grip. So I knew my foam and tire setup was probably going to be okay. I just needed to drive and avoid some sections where people with portals could go over, or I had to take a slightly different line, or, I know my belly skid plate on the truck's a little lower than a lot of people, so for that, and I knew it was grippy enough where it would grab you. It would. So I didn't know what to expect, but it was actually pretty good grip, and I'm glad it was, because that's mainly what I drive on. So.
And I know you always stick to the compound. You run Proline tires, and you stick to a certain compound. We've discussed this in the past. Coming from the East Coast, I'm a Predator compound fanatic. We don't side hill as much as you guys do, so I'm not personally worried about tires rolling over. It's all about front tire grip, soft inserts in front. Not a lot of softness in the back, but sticky tires. you probably didn't run Predator compound, right?
No,
no issues.
No, that's an argument.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like, you run them nonstop. You love them. I've tried them and I won't touch them. So I've ran my G8 crawlers in 30-degree sleeting. It's, raining, snowing, 30 degrees outside, and they did exactly what I needed them to do. So if that's not a testament for me, I mean, I don't know why I would run a Predator and have to figure out foam setups and everything again. But it's also, I think, it's preference and driving style too. So
yeah, a lot of it is just like mental and confidence. Like I'm convinced I need that grip in the front tires to climb stuff.
I will give the Predator, though, they break in quicker, so they're at their optimal worn in stage a lot quicker than G8. Like I get sets of G8 tires and I put them on trail trucks and other stuff, and I run them for a year or two before I put them on a comp truck because they're not broken in and ready yet.
Yeah.
Whereas Predator, you run 4 or 5 packs and you're there.
We'll go in circles here a little bit. I think it's all right. But while we're on tires, what do you run? Because there's just a lot of black magic out there for inserts. For me, I run 2-stage in the back. I'm looking for a little bit of air gap, but ProLine 2-stage. And on my SCX10 Pro, I run 2-stage in front. So it's the same setup front and back. But typically I'll run a standard foam in front, really squishy, and then 2-stage always in back. And again, I'm just worried about the tire collapsing if I have to side hill. But you run some 3D printed inserts, right?
Yes, only in the front.
Only in the front. Tell us about that, like what you run, what brands you've tried, and why you're doing that.
So I originally started with ProLine dual stage front and rear. And then I was still getting a little more tire roll in the front. So I 3D printed some rings to press on a 1.9 wheel. So it was basically the outer diameter of a 2.2 wheel on the inside. It would stretch the foam out. Basically lose that air gap, but the bead wouldn't be bulged out. It would come down to a 1.9 wheel. So I liked that aspect because I've seen just the bulge of the tire get gates. I mean, it's that close. We're driving with millimeters. So I wanted to keep a fairly flat face to the wheel and tire. That's what I started with. And then probably in the last 6 months or so, I've switched over to Crawler Innovations dual stage medium outer and comp cut in the rear. I know there's a lot of things, but they have a lot of different foams to offer. So I run those in the rear, and then Three Brothers 3D printed single stage foams in the front, and tuning rods. So they make really high density little foam tuning rods, and you can insert those in the pattern of the printed foam or anti-foam, and get it the feeling. So I actually do a star shape. I know it's kind of going back to old school. We used to cut our foams in star shape all the time. That's what I go. So there's a firm and then a soft and a firm as you go around the wheel and tire. So it seems to do well. The side hill capability of the 3D printed foam is a lot better. It doesn't shift is what I'm finding, but it still allows the tire to feel softer when it needs to be with straight impacts, or if you're trying to turn up into something. So that's what I'm running right now in my Class 2 and my Performance Scale truck. Class 3 is, for other size tires, I'm running Crawler Innovations dual stage. Some of them are a mixture of like 4 different part numbers and things, but there's most of them are Crawler Innovations dual stage.
All right.
Yep.
And how much time did you spend testing to get that? Or I know you, as an engineer, you have the advantage. you could probably work out a lot of this in your head and save a lot of time. But did you spend some time testing before?
Testing the foam setup?
Yeah, just different combinations.
Yes and no. It depends on the weight of your truck a lot too. So for one truck, I had a hard body and a bunch of thicker metal for bumpers and sliders and all that. Well, then I went to a Lexan body and kind of slimmed down everything, and my foams were too stiff. So a lot of that is, getting kind of the idea, do I need soft, medium, firm, depending on the weight of my truck, where that falls. And then it's also just how your truck reacts to it. The Pro is pretty low, so it has pretty good side hill, but you still need it to turn up into things. So you need a pretty soft foam to have the contact patch of the tire form into that, but you don't want the tire to roll over because then you lose all of your tread. You're just trying to drive on your sidewalls.
Yeah.
So I kind of sit there and do a few trail runs or set up a few gates and run and kind of look at what the tires are doing and what the suspension's doing. And I'll change a few things, maybe order a new part, maybe just move a shock forward or backward. And then usually I'll do it and then change it back and see if I notice that. If I do it and change it back and I didn't notice anything, then I'm going to stay where I already was, because it might, in another situation, it might do something that I'm not used to.
Yeah.
So that's how I got onto the 3D printed foams in the front. And they do way more than the normal typical dual stage. So that's the only reason I'm not running them in the rear. Mm-hmm. So I haven't even tried them in the rear. Just they weigh, I weighed it and it was almost 80 gram difference per wheel.
Okay.
Dual stage foam to a 3D printed foam, at least the way I'm running it. So that was significant enough for me to not want to put the weight back there.
Now, speaking of setup, that SCX10 Pro has the selectable underdrive, and the performance scale class is interesting that you're not allowed a third channel at all. Like, you can't have a servo back there, but you can manually select it. Did you run it in 1-to-1 or underdrive?
I ran it in underdrive the whole time. Yep. So 1-to-1 is good if you can shift it back and forth, but when you can't, I think running it in underdrive will perform overall better.
Yeah, there's just more to gain than lose. So
So I actually got rid of all of the shifting and everything. I 3D printed a little spacer to go inside the transmission, and that was purely just because I knew I couldn't shift it. So why have all of that stuff on the truck for this specific class?
Yeah.
So
you were building for this event too. So like somebody else out there who just wants to take advantage of that transmission and they're running in that class, the SCX10 Pro makes it easy to remove the servo and lock it in either position, which is nice.
Yes. I purpose built this truck and I only run it in the comps. Like, it doesn't get trail time. Mm-hmm. I have another one close enough that's what I test and tune with foams and wheels, and because the width of the wheel is another big one, if it makes your tire wider or narrower, what it does with that, how it sucks it in to the foam if you have an air gap on your sidewall. So there's a lot going on in these trucks to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. But I purpose built this truck. Like, it was pretty fresh when I went. It had a few scratches on the bottom. The body was brand new. It was purpose built.
All right.
But for my other trucks, I leave the shifting in it. I leave the servo in it. I run it around, try the same line over with shifting it, seeing what it's going to do in underdrive and 1-to-1, things like that. So this one was just purpose built. So you can see that there's not much left of the truck.
Yeah, that's neat. Now, for people out there who aren't super familiar, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're side hilling, definitely keep it in 1-to-1. If you're looking for turning radius, underdrive it. Climbing, underdrive. Ledges, hopping a ledge, up a ledge, underdrive. But that's when you want to shift back and forth. You see a side hill, the 1-to-1 seems to help quite a bit. Is there more that you've seen that you're looking at a course and selecting for?
Reversing. So if there's a really steep gate and there's no way to get around the bottom and turn up, you can back down next to it and then try and move yourself over and up through it. It's really hard to reverse with underdrive. You already can't steer the rear, and now it's just pushing it wherever it wants. All your weight's on the front. Your weight bias is forwards. You have the rears now turning slower. So it's just trying to push it all over. And then if you add in any sort of angle or, a feature in the rock that wants to hold the tire and then release it, I still usually have to take like two or three reverses with underdrive. So 1-to-1 makes it just drive like it does forwards, just right back. You can steer, get around there and go. But yeah, side hills, like you said, and then sometimes bumping up things. If your rear has a bigger ledge than the front, you need that rear wheel speed to hit and then continue to climb. And so that's also another use for 1-to-1 over underdrive.
Those are two good tips. Now, when you set yours up, do you have a momentary switch or do you do a standard switch?
Just a standard 2-position. So it's either 1-to-1 or underdrive.
Okay.
So
I've been using currently as a momentary switch, but I think I'm going to change it. I find believe it or not, my finger coming off. I could hear it beep off, and I use a momentary switch for dig all the time without an issue, but it's usually a briefer use than trying to run it like through a whole gate and a half in underdrive. So I think I'm going to switch that to the way of your setup. Makes sense. Now, what about shocks in link positions, shock positions? What did you run?
This is exactly how it came off the course from Maine. All the shocks and the links are in the stock kit positions. I haven't changed anything other than I put 45 weight oil in the rear shocks. So 35 front and 45 rear.
Okay.
And then I put titanium links on it. So again, just saving weight, and then aluminum pivot balls. You can see kind of the blue one in there. And that's purely the pivot balls are just for looks. I like
just
it.
For look. I was going to ask you what,
they do save a little weight, but I'm not weighing every little part I put on this truck. People do, but it looked cool, so I bought them. Titanium links do help a lot though, because it technically is weight that's on the chassis. It's not, so it's sprung weight technically.
Okay.
So that does help reduce what leaning you get on side hills and things like that.
All right, good to know.
So that was one of the big things were the titanium links, because I ordered them by length, and from I think Hardcore RC has them, and you just order by length. You tell them I want 111 millimeter, and they send you however many you tell them.
Yeah, and you definitely had the measurements because you came up with the measurements. So
yeah, there was that. I have these cross braces. They happen to be the same width for the Rock Pirates chassis. So I was laying around and put them up, and I said, oh, that's perfect. So I just didn't need, again, just weight for the rear cross brace or the servo tray. I wasn't running a winch. I don't need to mount that anywhere. And then just a simple 3D printed. So that groove the grill sits in, and I actually did cut the front of the chassis off about 8 or 9 millimeters.
Cool.
Just to get that approach. So
now let's talk about the body. A lot of the guys in Europe running the performance scale love the deadbolt body, which I love, right? As a marketing guy, you ran something different. What made you pick that body, which traditionally isn't, it's a Jeep, but it's not a rock crawler body?
So normally when I look for a body, I go straight to, I don't care what it looks like. I just go straight to the width, length, and height dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can cut wheel wells out bigger or add a piece of Lexan here and there, bolt it to it if I need to. But I look what the width and the size of it is. So this one fit perfectly on the width. So it's about just at the inside of the tires. And then in the performance scale class, you have to have tire coverage at the axle center on the front. So the flares were the perfect width. I just had to cut a little bit away from that and the grill. And then the height was also the thing. So from bottom of the door to top of the roof has to be 4.5 inches.
So that's a Proline JT Jeep body, but it's for a 10 scale monster truck, right?
Yes, it's for the Arma Granite, I believe.
Okay.
And it's the photo picture is a black. It's all painted black. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it worked out. I did shorten the bed. I took 1 inch out of it just because I didn't need the overhang or the length. And I just some shoe glue and 4 M2 screws hold it all together. Looks kind of cool. So it's a short.
It looks really good. Who painted that for you?
So this is a local guy, Bonehead RC, is on Instagram. Okay. He's right here in Utah, and he painted this one, and then all of my class 1, 2, 3, all of those are painted all the same as this. So really good guy. We crawl probably once a week, if not more sometimes. He has a pro. Recently, our other buddies got pros, and so he's been painting up a bunch of pro bodies, and then he actually gives them to the local hobby shop to sell as well. So if you walk in to the local hobby shop, there's custom painted pro bodies already done, which is kind of cool. You just pick whichever one you like and buy it. So super good guy. Makes some 3D printed parts for the pro and does painting and. I feel bad because every time I give them a body, like, hey, I need it in like a week. And anyone that knows RC painters, that's like unheard of. It was like maybe in 2 months, but he did this one in 3 days for me. So he had it turned around. I cut it all out, traced the design on because I have the template from the other bodies. So it was pretty much ready, prepped. I even bought the paint, got him the paint. So, and he did all the painting in 3 days and brought it back. So,
looks awesome. So, what's the guy's name again? And he's on Instagram?
Yeah, Bonehead RC. His name is RC. So,
and I noticed when you had the body off, you're running the carbon fiber chassis rails. I know these weigh half as much as the stock aluminum. What does that mean to people? So, like,
so it's pretty close. It's somewhere in the 60% over the aluminum, and that again is it's sprung weight. So basically, anything that your shocks are holding up is considered sprung weight, to put it simply. And that's what causes your truck to start leaning over on the side hills or to start unloading a front tire on steep climbs, things like that. So whatever you can do on the chassis side to get it lighter really helps the performance of the truck. And then usually I'll take the weight of it before I do a bunch of things. And like I'll build this up stock, take the weight, and then I'll put everything I can do to lighten this up. So like we said, this is purpose built. I took a lot of this off, no sliders, bumper mounts, servo tray, nothing. I got rid of all the shifting. I mean, this one really was just bare minimum. And then I weighed it again, and then I try and get that same amount of weight back in the front axle. So it has the aluminum C-hubs from Axial, the brass knuckles from Axial. I left the stainless steering links on there for a little more weight. And then the Vanquish aluminum wheels helped. with a little bit of weight, and I just trust a metal wheel over a plastic one, just for clamping that bead lock. Because I mean, if I can do anything I can to avoid a 1-point reverse, then I'm doing it. If it's tired down to the wheel, if it's jammed in there, I'm trying it, because it comes down to that at the end of the day sometimes.
Yeah, you don't want to peel that tire out of the bead. So when you could clamp that thing down past normal torque specs, it's good. So I see one question popped up here, and I'd be surprised if the answer is yes. The guy asked, do you use shock bands in front? I'm imagining no, but do you ever use shock bands in front?
No, I've seen a lot of other guys around here run them. For me, it only helps you on steep climbs and maybe side hills, but that's all it will do. And then when you get to the top of that steep climb, you have no breakover, because it just sucked your truck. You had from that ground clearance to that ground clearance.
Yeah.
So it just sucked your truck down permanently. So now you're not getting over, you're not articulating as much, so you can't get over or up on a side hill as well. You're not doing breakovers as well. You're getting caught other places. So it's one of those things, everything you do is cause and effect. So it's just which one weighs more for you. I personally don't run them. Those are my reasons. I've had friends that swear by them, and they drive really well with them. So
sure.
I think it's a personal preference, a lot to do with what terrain you're on. If you just have big flat rocks with steep inclines, then give them a shot. But on a course, if you're just comping, you have to be pretty versatile. So like I said, this truck sits a little lower than maybe a truck with portals or some other chassis out there. Well, I just know I have to bump up over a gate or, try and drive around that, but I might be able to stick a side hill that no one else can, or things like that. So it's all just how you want to weigh it out.
Yeah. So I've always viewed them personally, this probably isn't accurate, as like kind of a Band-Aid that you probably have some other setup you should be addressing if you need them. And then an option I don't see a lot of people use, I'd rather see people get a hook that's big enough to fit your front link and use your winch as a suck down winch.
So that, I mean, in SORCA classes, you can do that. As long as you're not touching the hook to hook it up. But with this class, you're limited to 2 channels, so you can't do that. In Pro MOA, you can have a servo on your truck, even though you have motor on each axle. You can have a servo on your truck that sucks the whole truck down. Normally with those trucks, though, once you drive the front only and the rear's locked, it just sucks the truck down anyways. But this is what you get. You have this time and points, drive through the gates. I enjoy that about the truck and the class. But
I love that class. I wish that class was more of the norm, mostly because I'm lazy when it comes to scale points.
It's definitely harder to build to that. It takes more time. Like, one of these trucks you could build in a night, put it together. If you have all the parts on hand, there's the only parts on this truck that aren't readily available, I would say, is like the bumper, which that's specific to how I cut the chassis and the body and where I drilled the holes. And so, I mean, if you guys want a bumper, I can upload it on Thingiverse, but it's pretty specific. The spacer, I know people sell the file or make them on the Facebook pages, so if that's something you're interested in, those are out there. Other than that, it's really just all off the shelf truck, nothing custom. So one guy's asking shock oil, I'll say it again, 35 weight front stock and 45 weight rear, stock springs front and rear. So pretty close.
All right. Now, what did you run for I know a lot of guys are running like drone batteries, really, really lightweight batteries. What did you end up running?
So I found an E-Flight battery. So I don't know what plane or helicopter or what it's meant for, but it's a little 450 milliamp 3-cell LiPo. It might even be 75C. I can grab one really quick.
Sure.
So yeah, just that guy.
And
so it's
C rating and all that stuff's no issue whatsoever.
No, I honestly, I don't recommend it. Have to say that. Don't.
Yeah.
But I turn my low voltage cutoff off, and if I waste a battery, I waste a battery.
Yeah.
It's more important to me to finish a course than what $15 to $20 battery. And I've yet to go through a battery. It's never happened. Even running a 450 milliamp, you can only drive for 6 minutes straight. That's all you can do. And this has been enough, more than enough. It usually only uses maybe 55, 60% of it.
And looking at that battery brings up another topic we've talked about. So I use the Velcro strap that the engineer provided with the kit, but the engineer does not.
Not on this truck, no. So the engineer purposely left a flat spot right here on the side of the case so that you can either mount an ESC or a small battery or anything you want.
So that's awesome. And so you just Velcro mostly, even when you have the side plates, I see on your rigs, you often just Velcro it in place.
Yeah. So getting the weight more inboard helps it with the truck wanting to lean on side hills. It's basically taking your leverage of your weight out here and moving it in here, so it doesn't let it go as far. Some trucks, the way you're building them, if you have an interior or something or a big battery, you can't do that. You run it on the outside on the slider tray, or there's a lot of other options. I think DSM Off-Road has a bunch of them.
Yeah,
Bonehead RC, again, the guy that painted the body, he has a little tray that goes up and over the trans to mount a battery and receiver, ESC, everything right in the center. So there's a bunch of different options there. I guess if you look at, so this is my class 2 truck, and they're fairly identical setup, but I still have the sliders on there. So
you only so there's a lot to discuss here. On the sliders there, you're running just the front pieces, the main pieces. You don't run the complete slider.
So the front, and then I purposely made it so there's 2 screws from the side in the design so that you can easily just bolt on a piece of aluminum strap, and there's your metal slider.
Gotcha.
So makes it easy. That's an easy 3 points for Sorka guys there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And just to clarify about the weight positioning, so you've schooled me on this before. So when you're talking about weight on the chassis, you want it as center as possible. But on the axle, it's the opposite. So when you're talking the unsprung weight,
yep,
right?
On the axles, you want it as far out as possible, as far into your wheel as you can, because that gives the chassis, you want it inboard so you don't have the leverage to lean. On the axle, you want it out as wide as possible, so you do have that leverage to bring a tire down or whatever obstacle you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I really like these knuckles that just add a bunch of weight, however you can see those. So just a bunch of weight to fill it, and then I run a pretty narrow hub, so I'm 9.5 inch wide overall. But so most of that brass is out in the wheel, at least in the tire. So I like that there. The carbon fiber servo mount, I know there's no crazy benefit to it. It's one of those looks cool.
It looks cool.
So I think somebody weighed them and they're almost the same with the 2 spacers and the carbon plate and the plastic one. I would say maybe the carbon's definitely stiffer. So if you're running like a high torque servo, which I think a lot of people are, I definitely am, it helps not transfer as much of that into the mount itself.
Yeah, people are running 3 times the torque. I thought was a lot back in the day. So like when we had 300 inches of torque or whatever back in the day, I thought we had hit a sweet spot, and people are running up to 1,000 direct, right? I mean,
yeah, I will run anything. Lowest I'll go is like 900 and 0.10 for the speed. I won't do anything slower than that, because you just sometimes you need to wiggle those tires either to free up a tire that's under a overhang, or just get away from something, or just to upset the truck so it shifts downhill or something like that. You need the speed there too.
mm-hmm.
And then the torque, yeah, most trucks I'm over 1,000 at this point, ounce-inch.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah,
Stuff's come a long way.
When we thought our high-tech, 280 ounce servos were awesome on our AX10s, and little did we know we'd be running nothing less than 800-900. So,
and it also helps with like durability. These are aluminum case servos. These things are not just stronger; they're way more durable.
I mean, I get a lot of questions too about running a full size servo instead of a short one. So that's, it barely hangs down. I've never gotten caught up on it. If you can see that, there's
Oh, we lost your sound, Wyatt.
You're
Did you
back.
hit your mic? Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yep. Just a little came unplugged. So yeah, it scratches it, but that's really about it. I've never gotten, the only time, I shouldn't say never, I've gotten hung up on it once, and I dropped off of a rock that came to a point, and then I tried to back up.
Yeah.
It was on my axle tube on the servo. It's going to get caught up on whatever you had. So it's not a must to run a shorty servo. I know a lot of people are all about that. They want the most clearance, but you don't have to. It works just fine.
Yeah, I did switch to a low profile. I ran like you said, a standard first, and a lot of it was just being able to live with the cosmetic damage it was doing. My backyard course is all loose rock, so it's like a rock garden, like a full size Jeep rock garden. So you're scraping a lot, and it was just whether you can live with putting that many scratches in a servo.
Aluminum cases. I mean, just run them. You're not going to hurt it from scratches. It's going to take a lot more, I would hope. So at least the servos I run haven't been hurt from scratches. So
yeah, for me, it was just living with looking at it. And we were talking about the weight. So, Kenneth Black asked, so you're going to run the stock plastic diff cover, and that's a yes.
Yep. Yeah, so the diff cover hits a lot of things. It's the lowest point on a straight axle truck. So the plastic slides over a lot better than any other material. That's also why I run the stainless tubes or the steel tubes still. The brass is softer metal. It's going to grab the rocks. You can get away with it sometimes, but I just rather not take the chance. So I know people out there, I saw some trucks running like brass skid plates. I think that's probably more just for weight than anything. They needed the weight in the chassis for like the pro class or some of the minis. Maybe I think I saw that. So there's, it's like any other RC car. There's a lot of tuning and a lot of personal preferences and things like that. There was a question. This is the 2300 kV 2-in-1, so not the 1400. And run it on 3S. So
I run them both. I run them always on 3S. I've been super pleased with both. I think the 2300 I go with often just because it's a little bit more versatile, but both are very good. So we've covered your setup. One thing that comes up a lot is, and since we have an engineer here, we're going to put it to him. The rear link risers, I found only when you're going in a situation where there's weight transfer to make any difference. Can you dispel or confirm the myths with the benefits of link risers?
So on the Pro, at least, because every truck is different with geometry, it's for anti-squat, which means when you're climbing and your truck's putting all that torque down, it's going to squat the rear suspension. So you don't want it to squat, because then it effectively makes the climb even steeper.
Yeah.
So what people are doing is putting a link riser on the back to lift the link up. And then, so you kind of, I don't know how to show this greatly, but you follow from link mount up to link mount in straight lines with your uppers and lowers. And where they meet is going to be where you want to work with. So for your geometry, if that's further forward, everyone aims for a different spot. It's how you build your truck, different chassis companies. So if you do that on this truck, it actually does not benefit. So it puts it so low, I guess, up here instead of up a little bit, and it makes it come back more. So I don't think on the Pro it's needed. People run them, and they'll swear by them again. And they'll go, "You have to run a link riser; it climbs so much better." I think it attributes to other things. That just messes with the geometry of this truck. That's not at least how I designed it for. If it's working for you, then run it. But I would not recommend one. So I even had a design for one, and then did all the calculations for roll center and anti-squat and anti-dive, everything for the whole truck again. And it wasn't going to benefit to where we would even need to make one. So from my perspective, you guys tell me I'm wrong, that's okay. But from my perspective, the SCX10 Pro does not need a link riser in the rear.
Yeah, it's a matter of debate. I've been kind of really on the fence about them. I've tried them on Capra axles, SCX10 3, portal axles, the AR45s.
Portals get even crazier, because then you have all the leverage of the portal, and then you have your link riser even further up, and that really starts getting crazy with numbers.
All right. So you're just coming off a big win, but you're not done for the season yet. What do you have coming up right in the near future?
I leave tomorrow morning for Maryland for Super Shafty Fall Crawl. That is a super fun event. It's my third year going. It's a man-made water rafting place that they empty out for us to crawl. So it's a lot of boulders cemented in place. Makes for some fun transitions, drops, steep climbs, things like that. And they run all sorts of classes. So they run all the WRCCA classes, all of the SORCA classes. They run a U4 race. They run an SCX6 class. I mean, they have it all going on there. So I'm packing as many rigs as I can and going to go have some fun with those guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique place to run. Not your everyday type terrain.
And then,
go ahead.
Yeah. And then the first weekend in November is another event, Clash of the Four Cardinals, and that's in Southern California. Well, I guess still, I say Southern California. It's where Ultra 4 happens. So where King of Hammers is, it's out there on some of those rocks. And
that's SoCal to me. I'm on the East Coast. It's SoCal. High desert, but SoCal.
Yeah, a lot of times you say SoCal, and people are like, "Oh, San Diego." It's a little more north than that. So,
a little bit.
That's going to be just SORCA classes, new rules, but those are two bigger events I'll be to next. Just trying to
both national level, like these are national level events.
Yes,
with high competition.
I would consider them national level. Yeah, people travel for them.
Yeah.
And then there's also another comp the first weekend of December out here in Logandale, Nevada. So not too far from me, a little bit outside of Vegas. And that's going to be Sportsman and Pro WRCCA. So that's
very cool. I'm going to have to get the info on that and add that to the calendar because that doesn't sound familiar to me. So if you are looking for comps, make sure you check out axialadventure.com. We have an event calendar. These events that Wyatt is going to are on there, except for the one in December. So I'm going to make sure we add that. But if you're looking for stuff near you, definitely check out that event calendar. I see we have some other questions. Reds, I see your question up there. Reach out to me, Red. Email me. It's mhiggins@horizonhobby.com. We'll get you straightened out. Sounds like you have issue we could fix. It's not a problem. And then Kennedy, you have another engineering contest. Let's see. When designing the truck with the wheeling knowledge you have, I'll touch on that.
I just read that one.
Wyatt has a ton of full-size experience too. He's an enthusiast. We have a huge advantage at Axial. We have many people who are involved in full-size off-road. They bring their knowledge to what they design at Axial. Wyatt is no exception to that. He has a ton of wheeling experience in RC and full-size.
Try to.
So
it looks like he's asking, basically, do we design it all out, every little option part, everything thought of, or do we leave some for the aftermarket companies and work directly with any, is kind of what I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
I just try and design it to be the best functioning vehicle I can out of the box. And then I put together a list of option parts that I would like to see, and I see what gets approved. So basically how it works here, there are some parts where they told me, no way, we can't make that, or, this is going to be the price. And then I myself made the decision, like, that's too much for that part. Even I'm not going to pay that for that. And there's a lot of aftermarket support, which is awesome. So I also try and leave a little bit there. Because I know we can't do the most advanced machined parts for the cost that other people can. So there's a little bit there, but I try and design it for the best possible out-of-box performance and basically the best for the consumer and the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope everyone's enjoying their rigs. I've gotten plenty of suggestions and people sending me pictures of how they changed it or what they did with it, which is awesome. I like building stuff too. So I love seeing all the changes and what people think of it. Another really cool thing at Worlds was I got to meet a bunch of people from overseas. And so I got to kind of gauge the interest of the truck, in their market, how it's getting accepted or used over there, what they think about it. So that was also a cool experience. There were 9 different countries represented at Worlds. So that was really awesome to meet a bunch of different people that we all share the same hobby. And we all got together to drive and hang out and have dinner together and everything like that. So yeah, it was great overall and really cool to hear how the truck's doing. And I hope everyone's enjoying it. And like I said, I'm up for all of your suggestions and how you guys built them, because it's cool to see to me.
Yeah. So to add to that, Axial, we're definitely very pro aftermarket. Obviously, we're trying to offer the best product we can, but we know our audience loves to take even a perfect vehicle or what we think is perfect and take it to make it their own. So we're very friendly to the aftermarket. I think we consider both the consumer, the workability of a rig. So Wyatt can engineer a vehicle, and he might have to take into account other people being able to work on that easily, either in the field or just be able to wrap their head around it in general. So when he makes it consumer friendly, it also inherently makes it easier for the aftermarket companies.
There's a few things I could list off on the Pro that it just wasn't feasible. It's like, for instance, the motor could be lower. Yeah, it could be, but I don't know what motor combo every person buying this is going to run. So I don't know if you're running a small outrunner, a 2-in-1, the original 2-in-1 that's even longer, if you're running a 550 can, if you're going to rock race it and put a big brushless system. I can't account for that, so I have to make it fit everything. So yeah, it could have been a little further forward, a little lower, if I knew that, you know, you're running one of 5 motors. But that's things like that. You just, like I said, you build it to have the best possible consumer experience and perform the best, and that leaves room by itself for aftermarket.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we covered a lot. First and foremost, thanks everybody who joined us. We really appreciate you supporting Axial. We appreciate you coming out tonight to spend some time with us. Wyatt, congratulations on a huge win. That is something special. Not too many people could say that. It's not an event, one that a lot of people could go to, and it doesn't happen every year. So it's a big deal when you win it. So congratulations to you. Thank you for coming out. Guys, we're going to do this again. I hope you liked it. We'll be back. Again, reach out to us on Facebook, on Instagram. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll be back. We're going to have product developers on. We're going to have other engineers on. We'll have Wyatt on a lot. Wyatt has a lot to share on the product end, a lot to share on the full-size off-road, and then obviously in competitive RC. So he's a great guest to have. Thanks again, everybody who joined. Thank you, Wyatt. And we're going to sign off.
All right. Thanks for having me. See you, everyone.
All right. Take care. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.